Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter podcast. It's episode 7 of our instalment of the weekly pod. I'm Freddie Humphrey Wakefield, and I'm joined by Henry Miller and Will Grant. There's still no Jack Wright here, but he'll be back with us next week. But just to start off with, lads, how has the week been for you? Of course, a few things have happened. Norwich have had a few more pre-season games, but how have you been overall? What's the week done for you? How have you been?
I've been great. For me, anyway, there's been plenty of football to get myself into. I went down on Saturday to watch the under-21s play, and then I watched back the first team play on Sunday. So I've had quite a very football-heavy weekend, but I think that's where I like it now. I mean, the season is starting to come around the corner anyway, so I'm ready to get back into it.
Yeah, I'm all right as well. On a Euros come down after the final last week. So, just had a week relaxing and, following Norwich City as and when I can.
No, and that's superb. No, it really does feel like football is properly back. Well, club football, at least. Finally, we can get excited about our own players or get annoyed at them. But of course, there were some pre-season games played against Bruges and Liège. What were your thoughts on those games? Of course, myself and Will did a video about the Club Bruges friendly, but we didn't do one about Stade Liège when Norwich drew 1-1. Borja Sainz scored, and then it was cancelled out by a player who I'm not even going to try and attempt the pronunciation of his name because I'll make a fool of myself. But it ended 1-1 in Belgium to end the Belgian training camp. Will, you just said you watched it back there. Henry, I'm unsure as to if you watched either the Bruges or Liège game, but that's a good place to start. Of course, the play style of Torup is very much underway and it's looking promising at times, and there's a lot to be learned from it from fans' perspectives of watching it. So what did the pair of you think of those friendlies? Of course, you can't always take it for face value with it being pre-season. It's not going to ultimately determine how well or poorly you do. But what did the pair of you think of those games? Because they were against good standard opposition who, well, their season is starting, I think, next week.
Yeah, I think like you said there, Freddie, the style of play is what's been the most encouraging. Like you look at Borja Sainz's goal against Liège, and that was brilliant. The tricky footwork, the finish. I think that just sums up what a Torup's Norwich side would look like, and it also shows how crucial Borja Sainz is to this Norwich team. And luckily, when we've discussed like transfer rumours and players leaving, not many people bring up Borja Sainz. So hopefully he can stay and be one of our most crucial players this season.
Yeah, I've been very, very impressed with what I've seen. It feels like in both games there's been so many exciting things to kind of like get yourself excited about. I think you could start from like the tactical shape, and then you go to the likes of Callum Fisher, etc., etc. But I think it's really good to see the style of play is still looking good. I know it's still so early in pre-season, and obviously the system still needs some refinement. It still needs some work on it. I know actually, I think in Forup's press conference after the game, he stated that he wasn't too happy with the ball speed and the different kind of levels of intensity on the ball, especially in the Liège game. Sorry, but yeah, if I could take it back to the Bruges one first of all, if I may, I think the main thing I actually got from that game is, as well as doing a video on it as well, just watching back the Brad Hill's performance and the way I think he dealt with an attacker called Noosa, I think his surname is, and Noosa's been very heavily linked with, I think, Tottenham, Brentford over the last 12 months as well. So I think when you're seeing a player who has obviously went out on loan to Accrington last season, and when you see them that they're now starting to like make a name for themselves in the first team against high-level opposition, I think you'll then getting more excited about their credentials for the new season, really. And I think Hills is definitely in the topic and the conversation to try and be in the first team squad next season. It certainly feels like during this last 2 weeks that he has probably propelled himself like more forward, maybe compared to Adebayo, Tompkinson, etc. But it's still so far away, really. But it was really good actually to see the likes of Nunes and McLean come back into the first team. Quite actually, what I found quite interesting as well. During in the midfield block, Nunes and McLean, they kind of alternated their positioning during the first half of the game. You saw Kenny McLean on the right-hand side at times on the free, which is quite bizarre because normally he's more left-footed. then you kind of saw Nunes in the actual like central role. So obviously you want to try to get his qualities on the ball as well. But they both kind of alternated positions, and I thought that was very, very interesting to observe. I know I saw maybe like a little bit of backlash from Kenny's performance actually on Saturday. Or maybe I'm wrong, guys, but I watched the game back and I actually thought he was actually one of the better players. I thought he gave the team real intensity on out of possession, pressing really well. There's a really good moment actually from Kenny where he pressed really high up and actually won the ball back for the team in the high area as well. And actually in possession, I thought he gave the team real drive and impetus to play out from the back really well. So I thought actually Kenny actually helped our ball speed, although I think it's still got to work and improve. I think Kenny had quite a solid game, and also Kenneth Fisher also played at left back as well, so he's adding into some new positions. I think he's played now as a right back, he's centre midfielder, and obviously a left back, right back. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how he's developing as well. My only thing I've noticed so far is that during like our mid block, we do kind of like retreat still quite deep, and I think that was quite demonstrated actually at the weekend as well. So be interested to see if that is a theme throughout the season where we retreat quite deep during the middle stages of the game and middle third of the game. But yeah, overall, I'm positive. And I also want to touch on as well what Henry said. I thought Borja signs during that Liège game, I thought it was absolutely superb. He just looks so sharp. He looks so bright. And obviously, we touched on him during midweek, Freddie, as well. But yeah, very, very impressive Borja signs. Took his goal really nicely as well. And I also liked as well how he was very positive on the ball, looking to try and switch the play as well. So I thought he brought many, many good moments of play to the game. And overall, I was actually quite impressed with both performances. And then also as well, seeing the likes of Finley, Welch, etc., continue to impress as well during pre-season, out of the young contingent as well. So all in all, I'm happy so far.
Yeah, fantastic. No, you're full of praise, and that's always great to see, especially in pre-season where we didn't win either game, but there's still evidence of a clear playing style, and it's coming through, which is what Norwich fans wanted to see. That was the big thing of Torup coming in. We wanted to see a clear play style because Norwich have lacked that over the last few seasons. But you mentioned there, Will, about playing in a deep block and players inverting positions in the midfield. Well, you did go, as you said earlier, you went to watch the under-21s go and play Galston, and they won that game. I believe it was 2-0 in the end, was it?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, of course, there's been the big question of, well, there was at the fan forum a few weeks ago of, are the academy going to be playing the same way that the first team are? Now, you're someone who has watched both teams, and you obviously, of course, watch the under-21s even in person, so you may have a better idea of how they were playing if you took real notice of it. Was that something that you did see, maybe, of it was clear that there's similar play styles there and there's a lot of themes that have been quite clearly transferred over from the main team and being integrated into these younger players?
Yes, very definitely. It was actually really like visible throughout the whole game. Although I felt actually during the game, I felt that Norwich actually quite, this is obviously the under-21s, I did think they at times had problems at like playing through the lines on a frequent basis. I still thought their passing was quite standard. It wasn't really progressive, but I think you also have to add context to it as well. Look, I think they would obviously have broke down all the different stages of Fox build-up play in training. So I think the first stage is all about making the centre halves actually feel comfortable on the ball. And I think during the last season, especially under 80s level, there was quite a lot of turnovers, like leading to goals of them just giving the ball away in kind of silly areas. So I think the first two games is all about trying to get the centre halves comfortable on the ball. And then you can try to work out some more intricate frameworks about how you be progressive and how you be creative in the pockets and through the thirds as well. But yeah, overall, what I actually really like to see as well is just how the team's shape was overall. I thought overall across the whole game, really, they were all very thorough and structured in the way they kind of sat in the shape. Obviously, I talked about Lucy Mahuva as well on Twitter. I don't know if you saw, but he was a really good example of what actually Montoya has been doing in the first team, inverting in as a centre back to formulate like a back three, similar to what Kenny McLean did last season for the first team under Wagner. So, and that's been quite apparent throughout the whole preseason for the first team. So, yeah, I was actually really impressed with how with where the under-21s look to like position themselves on the ball. Look, I think they'd be fair to say that they could have been better and more progressive on the play, but their pitch was quite hard and it was a bit stodgy and it was a bit bobbly, so it was quite hard to try and create quite a lot of good ball speed movements. But it's still so early on in the season, so I'm really looking forward to see how they can kind of progress it. But yeah, and also I think to note as well that the squad is like so stretched. I think I made a point during one of my verdicts after the game that you've actually had like defenders playing in midfield for the whole game, so you can't really disclose the fact that I think it's too much. I think it's quite harsh to kind of criticize a player when they're more like suited as centre half. I mean, the likes of Alfie Doy, etc., they are playing as obviously centre mids when they're actually defenders. So it's still, I think it's still quite harsh to kind of criticize that at the moment. But overall, I was pleased with how the team looked to like position themselves on the pitch as well. They also showcased their desire to be a 4-3-3 shape out of possession as well. So really, really good from that department, and you can clearly see the tactical trends between and the 21's team, which is so important right now. They just got to improve on the ball in all departments really, but yeah, it was a tough pitch, but hopefully we can still look to improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, let's certainly hope so. It does seem that way, and that's very good to hear. You want the academy lads to do really well in that play style because, as we always say, and as Norwich fans will know, a Johannes off-tour-up team does have an element of a lot of youth to it. There's no doubt about that. We've already seen, well, names you've already mentioned, Brad Hills and Guilherme Montoya, two very young players impressing a lot. You know, and I'm going to have to stay quiet about them, otherwise I'll go on for a full hour about how good I think they are. And yeah, well, actually, mentioning Brad Hills, if his dad's watching, thank you for following me on Twitter, mate. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. That's lovely. Good man. Hopefully you enjoy everything we're doing this season just as much as I'm enjoying watching your son play. Top player. But anyway, getting back on track. A name there which you mentioned, Will, a few times is Kenny McLean. This is a player who, to get into the transfer side of things, or a little transfer section, if you will, Kenny McLean heavily linked with Rangers and Sheffield United and moves away. There was reports coming out from Rangers fan websites that Kenny McLean was going to go to Sheffield United for $1.5 million, which I think is absolutely ludicrous for a player who's just won Player of the Season. Just don't quote me on what I said 6 weeks ago about how I think he should be sold. No, the promise that wasn't me. That was my twin brother. But anyway, it looks as if he's going to be staying because, well, he's the club vice captain alongside of Grant Hanley, and then he's also, well, yeah, I've just got our Player of the Season, very important player to the system. But he said in a Pinkin interview that he wants to be here. Those were his exact words. So that's, of course, brilliant to see. But, of course, as we all know, Kenny McLean, a vital player to Norwich City, especially last season, and how he links up defence to attack and his long ball playing capabilities, albeit that maybe that can slow down the pace of a game, which Torup maybe doesn't like as much, you would think. But again, that's something that can be coached into a player, and he'll know how to pass a ball quickly and where to pass it. You know, he's been doing it quite well throughout his career. But I'm guessing both of your thoughts on that. Kenny McLean, he wants to stay, he wants to be at Norwich City. That's extremely refreshing to see after seeing a couple of weeks of speculation that he was off and his time as a Norwich City player was up.
Yeah, for sure. I've always said Kenny McLean is probably the most crucial player to Norwich. I'd say he's sort of in a league with Josh Sargent in the fact that if we lose the both of them, we'd be screwed, I reckon. Whereas anyone else, if we lose even someone like Gabriel Sara, with all of his amazing ability on the ball, we've shown in the past we can recruit to replace players like that. But I think it will be difficult to replace Kenny McLean. I think he is one of a kind. So the fact that he wants to stay and he's sort of shown his loyalty to the club is something we have to reward him with. And yeah, as you mentioned, Freddie, he got Player of the Season last season. Rightly so, I think, in terms of how much of a servant he's been for this club. So yeah, I'm all for Kenny McLean staying. And yeah, even if we get a really good offer, we just have to reject it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget as well, he was our Player of the Season last season as well, so he carries so much importance to the team. I think also with Kenny as well is when you've got quite a lot of young players around the team as well, I think having that role model who can support them and challenge them as well is really important. And I think during the season where I feel like we will have tough moments, there's no doubt about it, we're playing such a bold style of play. I think having really good leadership in the dressing room, and I think McLean is that person to really rally the troops when mood is quite down. So I think it's very important. And yeah, obviously he's a great player as well. I think he can also add real intensity to the team in possession as well this season. Obviously, you've got the accuracy of Nunes and the craft of Sarah, but I think Kenny is so good at changing the tempo of the game really well. Sorry. So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really big for him to say this season.
Yeah, certainly hope so. And in terms of player incomings, there's still nothing yet since the arrival of Jose Cordoba for the first team anyway. The academy have made a few signings, but still no sign of a first team signing, albeit Callum Doyle, a name who popped up and looks a fantastic bit of business, but he's currently out with Manchester City in the United States of America on their pre-season tour, and that doesn't end until a week before Norwich City's their season begins away at Oxford. I believe Manchester City's last game is they'll play Chelsea on the 3rd of August. Now, that really has halted the deal. Norwich had one, it was reported by Nick Masheter and Sam Seaman that Callum Doyle, there was a deal in principle agreed. It was going to be a loan deal with no option to buy, 1 year for the 20-year-old left-sided defender who can play as a centre-half, but was probably going to be used as a left-back for Norwich City due to Cordoba also being a left-footer and a natural centre-half. But it does seem as if that's going to be halted, and there could be a worry there, really, for Norwich, that if a team of higher calibre, or that Manchester City feel as if they'll get more use out of Doyle, if, say, they want to loan him in, or even there's a permanent offer made. You never know how much City will value him in terms of money. I'd imagine that'd be quite a decent fee because he's young and English and has already amassed nearly 100 career appearances at EFL level and has been promoted in 2 of the 3 seasons he's played at EFL level, and even the other one with Coventry, he got to a playoff final. So a player who clearly has got a very good track record even at 20 years old. But that, to me, that is actually sort of a bit of a cause for concern. As I say there, I think if another team does come in for Doyle with a nice offer, then we could really, that signing could not actually happen. And that really, it's annoying, really. I mean, but again, on the other side of things, I think I like that as well. The fact that Guardiola evidently sees something in him clearly, not just to loan him out to championship clubs rather than the other teams that Manchester City own in part of their whole group. I believe that includes Girona and New York or Melbourne City FC out in Australia. So they didn't just go down that easy route. But even to have him playing for them in pre-season, it's clear that this is a player Manchester City heavily rate, I think, which is great to see. Of course, you want to know that the parent club even think that he's got a future at their club, let alone playing well at a team elsewhere. But do the pair of you think that could be a concerning thing if he is to sign? This could not be until a week before the season begins, and he'll have no real familiarity with a Thorup system. It's very annoying if a deal is actually completed and he ends up joining, but there could be something as well where he could join sooner. But do you think we could be in danger there of that one, despite having a deal agreed, that could actually fall through and Doyle goes elsewhere?
I think we're always in danger of a player not signing until they're in the building and have signed on the dotted line. I think regardless, Montoya will start against Oxford. I think that makes the most sense. He's been given a lot of minutes with the first team in pre-season. So, I just think that's a no-brainer, really. Doyle, I absolutely love as a player and a Norwich City signing. I think it would be amazing, just what we're looking for. And, I'm just praying that we can get it over the line. I think it's pretty common that Manchester City would want him on their pre-season tour. And what you were saying there about some of the journalists who've reported on it, I think Nick Masheter and Sam Seaman both said that we've fought off strong competition from other championship teams for Doyle. So I think ultimately it wouldn't necessarily matter if another championship club did come in for him, unless they've just come down from the Premier League and had money, like Burnley or maybe Leeds. Those are the only teams who I think could maybe usurp us for his signature. But on the whole, I'm not worried. I think it will get over the line, but I think Montoya will definitely start against Oxford. And another key point, looking back sort of 4 or 5 years, when Angus Gunn was in his first spell at Norwich, he was obviously on loan from Manchester City, and there were reports there that Pep Guardiola was really impressed with how we dealt with Angus Gunn during that season. And maybe he trusts us to take Manchester City players on loan and develop them and develop their careers. So I think hopefully Pep has pushed for this move as well.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because if you look at Callum Doyle's career path, I think obviously, Freddie, you stated that he'd made 100 appearances already, I think, at the age of 20, which is absolutely crazy. So fair play to him. But I think he went from Sunderland to Coventry to Leicester, and obviously Leicester's quite a big team, and they actually got promoted. So it feels like to me that the next step for Doyle would have been to maybe get like a lower league Premier League move or like a loan move abroad. But for me, it just thinks that Norwich have done so well to kind of persuade them to join the club because although I feel Norwich is a very, very good, attractive proposition, especially because that left back role right now, there's no one there to like actually play it, especially from a senior perspective, apart from Montoya, of course. So I think if I'm Doyle and I'm looking at my options, I think Norwich is a very, very good good idea for him to join the club because I feel like he's got a big chance to play a lot of games. And I know we're going to touch on later about how we're also looking at another left back as well, which I'm not too keen about, but I'll discuss that in a bit later. But yeah, I think definitely a very, very good, exciting player. And I also think it suits Forup as well, stylistically. He wants that kind of hybrid left centre back and left back for his player. So, and Doyle can do that absolutely superbly as well. So as soon as I saw this rumor, I was so excited to see what could happen with it. And yeah, I don't know if it's going to change the picture much. If not, I'm going to look to try and add like another player there. I know I wouldn't. So yeah, very, very excited. Do I think Doyle could have probably got a better club? Yes, but do I think Doyle is prepped for a good season at Norwich? Yes, I do, because I think there's a really good pathway for him to actually play a lot of games for us this season.
Yeah,
it is also worth noting the season we went up the first time under Daniel Farker and won the league. The two starting fullbacks against Birmingham on the opening day were Ben Marshall and James Husband. So yeah, if we haven't got these signings in place for the first game against Oxford, it's not the end of the world. You know, it is a 46 game season, and it doesn't matter that these players aren't in place for the opening day.
No, I can't disagree with that, really. Yeah, that is a very valid point, isn't it? Where you start the season just scraping a 2-2 draw with Birmingham, with the likes of Ben Marshall, who I think now plays in, I want to say, the 12th tier of English football now. Ben Marshall, I've got no idea where James Husband is. He's probably
Blackpool.
Yeah, I think he's
still at Blackpool. Okay, he's still at Blackpool, so he's loitering around in League One mid-table, which he was, I think, before he sort of joined Norwich. Although I think, well, when he was at Middlesbrough, I'm pretty sure he got a few Premier League game run-outs. It was either him or George Friend that played there. But anyway, we're getting going a bit mental with it. But Will, you mentioned there about Norwich looking at another left back, and that man is Francisco Moura, 24 years old, Portuguese left back, plays for Famalicão, was part of the Sporting Lisbon Academy. I think he even featured in a few Europa League games for them a few seasons ago as a youngster. And that was reported by, originally first, Fabrizio Romano, that an unnamed English club put in a bid of €5 million. That ended up being us, which is quite mental to think with how little money Norwich City really have. They're realistically relying on a big sale of a big name. We'll get onto that in a second just after this. But again, Norwich still very the left back market, despite the fact that they had a deal agreed with Callum Doyle to as I said already, naturally a centre half, but he's most likely going to be playing as a left back or the left-sided centre back in the back three. But Francisco Moura, a player evidently who had a lot of promise, still in his younger years, approaching his prime, but Norwich putting in a bid of €5 million. That was rejected. Famalicão were looking for more, at least €7.5 million, but that's because Sporting Lisbon do have a 50% sell-on clause in his current contract at Famalicão, which is nuts. So that effectively means if he does go for €7.5 million, then that'll almost be just €4 million to both of the sides. But of course, a player who us Norwich fans will have very little idea about. I doubt either of you have ever watched a Portuguese league game in your life. I certainly haven't. I mean, I only know about 2 teams from the Portuguese league. But in terms of still being in the left-back market, I think we all know that was going to happen. That was said by Torup after we beat Northampton 2 weeks ago in pre-season. But in my eyes, I think that's still very good to see that we're looking for left-backs and we're looking in so many different countries and regions. I think that is very refreshing to still see. So, and I guess you two, do you feel the same about that in terms of you still like that Norwich are very active? They know this issue that they've got to address, and they just seem to be going through a proper list of targets and identifying players who evidently have a lot of promise.
Yeah, I must say I'm not a fan of us spending money on 2 left backs. I just don't think it makes sense. Especially when I think Montoya has had quite a good start to pre-season. Look, I know it's so early in pre-season, and obviously it isn't like a very accurate case study to say, oh yes, Montoya is now the option for the first team. No, it's not. But I think when I thought of this new regime, I was all about wanting the young players to kind of get exposed in difficult scenarios. Obviously you've got to prove yourself. Of course you have to, but I think it'd be very harsh if Montoya wasn't allowed to be a second choice left back next season. I think the stylistic fit of Callum Doyle is superb. I can't sit here and say definitively that this Portuguese guy can play a similar way to how Hoffer wants to as a hybrid left-sided defender. I just can't say that as well. So I'm personally not in favour of us spending, I don't know, 5 million. I don't know. To be fair, I know Romano is a very trusted journalist, but I just can't see how we would have done that. Unless it was absolutely crazy Adams money, but I just don't know how we would spend more like £5 million on a left back. It just doesn't seem right to me at all that we would do that. So I don't know about the kind of truth about that report, but I'm not in favour of us going to sign 2 left backs this summer. It's quite controversial, I must say, but that's what I'm going to get from me when I'm so in favour of the youth players. But yeah, I think it's very harsh, especially because I think we also need to look at the whole pitch as well. There's still like signings we need to make in other areas. I still think we need a new orthodox attacking midfielder. You can't play Ashley Barnes there, especially when he is obviously still injured. I think obviously, yes, you can play Sarah there, but is he better deeper? We don't know. So yeah, look, there's so many different factors to it, but I'm definitely not in favour of having 2 left backs that have been acquired this summer. I think it's a good chance to showcase the pathway again and showcase the kind of admiration to play young players. And I think Montoya can be a backup there, absolutely. But then I kind of thought about it on Napper's perspective, and the impression I get from Ben Napper is he's a long-term thinker, and he wants players to maximise their growth, whether that's at Norwich or elsewhere in the season. So maybe they think Montoya should go out on loan and then come back a better player for next season, and then hopefully they can send him on for big money for the seasons to come. But yeah, it's a very interesting one. I definitely feel if they bring in 2 left backs, I'll probably loan out Montoya. Would I do that? Probably not. But then again, I do see the long-term benefit if we are to loan Montoya out to an EFL club, for example.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a double-edged sword, really. So I 100% agree with you, Will. I think Montoya's looked really sharp in pre-season. So why not give him that opportunity to be second choice left back and maybe even have a few games in the Championship? I think anyone who's watched any of the pre-season games would be in favour of that. So from that perspective, then signing this left back for 5 mil makes no sense. But also, if you're within the club and you're someone like Ben Napper or Torup, if you think that Montoya needs a slight more experience for his development and the decision is to send him out on loan, then this makes complete sense. I'm reluctant to mention the P word, but obviously it will be mentioned a lot this season about what if Norwich do get promoted. And having a £5 million left back there who's had a season of experience in the Championship, when we know that if we sign Callum Doyle, we're not going to get him permanently, even if we go up, I don't think. I think then it would be a no-brainer to sign this left back. So, you can. It's one of those arguments and debates that you can spin either way, really. But I think personally, I'd be happy whatever the club do. If they gave extra minutes to Montoya and trusted him as the second choice, or even knocking on the door for first choice, I think I'd be fine with that. I think, I'd definitely be happy with that. But also, if we were to sign this left back for 5 mil, then that would also please me. So.
Yeah, so mixed opinions on if Norwich City should be getting in 2 left backs at once or if they should just settle for the one. But from incomings to outgoings, we've already mentioned about Kenny McLean is going to realistically stay as a Norwich City player over the new coming season. There's been rumours that Portsmouth are readying a bid to bring back Abu Kamara, although their manager, John Mastinho, has said that there's been no club-to-club contact as of yet. It does seem as if that Norwich are only going to sell Abu Kamara if the bid is a sufficient one. So clearly they've learned from the mistake of letting Ballymumba go for such a cheap fee, albeit he didn't really kick on as well as many would have expected in the Championship with Plymouth Argyle, and now he's got to play under Wayne Rooney. So we'll have to see how that fares out for him, but we don't need to worry about him. He's not a Norwich player anymore. But again, in terms of outgoings, I mentioned just before we spoke about Francisco Mora and a bit more about Callum Doyle there. I do think that if we are going to have more signings come through the door, we've got to do what we have done every single year since we really began under Delia Smith. We've been doing it since the 90s, and that's sell a player for big money. There is no hiding the fact that Norwich City are a self-financing club. That has been their business model for as long as Delia Smith has been a joint majority shareholder. That's the only way Norwich City are able to raise their finances, really, in order to be able to afford new players. Of course, there's so many that could be the ones to leave. There's Jonathan Rowe, Gabriel Sarah, Joshua Sargent already that could command quite nice transfer fees. There's even players who performed well at the back end of last season. Marcelino Nunez was linked with a move to Turkey, albeit the fee only got as high as €4.5 million, which is just far too low. I think the board probably thought that as much as fans did. But realistically, that is what we're going to have to do. There's got to be a big sale there if Norwich want to bring in more players. And that's been really the main criticism of over the last few weeks. There's not been enough signings, but simply because we don't have the money. We don't have parachute payments anymore. We only just cleared off our internal debts last season because of the I always struggle to pronounce that name. Atanasio, there we go. The Atanasio family were able to pump money into the club to clear it. But I think you two probably agree with that as well. There's got to be a big sale before Norwich can get their hands dirty and bring in a few more players to suit the tie-up system going into the new season. And they've not got long to do it because the season begins in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think it's one of those where if we do sell a big player, it will be later rather than sooner. And I'm worried that could then leave us in the lurch in terms of replacing that player. But I also think a domino effect could happen. So for me, the most obvious one to sell would be Jonathan Rowe. I think although he was injured last season, his form commands a big transfer fee and teams in the Premier League would be interested. We saw even 5 games into last season, Wolves were prepping a bid, I think, of £12 million that Norwich rejected. So, this was after 5 games, let alone a whole season. And you already had mid-table teams in the Premier League like Wolves come calling. So for me, he's the obvious one. And I think if he goes, then Abu Kamara needs to stay and needs to be a first teamer for Norwich. However, if Rowe stays, I think Kamara might be better off for his development, probably joining Portsmouth, if I'm honest. So, I think it will be one of those where a massive domino effect will happen, potentially regarding incomings as well, if Jonathan Rowe or any big player was to leave. But to me, that's the one that looks most likely. I think Gabriel Sarra, he's probably the most technically gifted player we have at the club at the minute. But everything that's coming through the grapevine this summer has suggested that he'd probably be more in favour of staying at the club than leaving. So I think for a Norwich perspective, although we need those funds, that's positive. We've mentioned players like Borja Sainz, Kenny McLean, Angus Gunn. They all look like they're staying as well. And I think Josh Sargent, for the form and what he can bring to the club, is irreplaceable as well. So for me, it would have to be Rowe.
Yeah, I've got quite a strong opinion on Kamara. If it was me, I'm going to come out with some TalkSport opinion here, but sorry, TalkSport, I'm listeners anyway. I wouldn't sell Kamara for anything less than £10 million. And the reason why I say that is you might raise my eyebrows now. Yes, I know, but you've got to think long term here. And I think Napa does as well. If Abu Kamara is given a similar opportunity to what John Rowe was this season, you could easily make more than £10 million the following season. Look, I know it's a risk, but when you saw Abu Kamara last season, I know it was League One, I know it was, but when you've got such an exciting winger who's got so much promise and can score so many goals, mate, the man played every game as well last season for Portsmouth as well, so that just shows also he's got great availability as well. And I think definitely if John Rowe is to leave, look, mate, the window is just so slow at the minute as well. Like that's another big factor as well. But I'm sort of the mindset that for Abu Kamara, it's all about the long-term growth and potential that Kamara has. And I think selling him for £5 million this summer, I wouldn't be happy with it, because I feel like in 4 years to come, you could easily be looking at maybe a £25-30 million player, because he's got that much potential. He just needs an opportunity and pathway to develop. I know he hasn't been so good in preseason just yet, but then again, I think he also was quite slow at Portsmouth as well. So we've got to give Abu Kamara time to develop and learn what Frank wants him to do. But there's a clear pathway there for Kamara, especially if Rowe leaves. So it's all about being patient with him. And I firmly believe if we invest in Kamara, we will definitely reap the rewards, because I think it's a very good environment for him. He's got the right manager. He's got the right teammates around him as well. He's got really, really good midfield players there as well for him. So he's at a really, really good club for him right now. It's just not to actually show him the pathway and just show him that he needs to be loved, because I honestly think if we give him all that, then I think in about 2 years' time, we could be looking at a player who could probably go for for about £50 million, similar money to John Rowe. So I'm not confident of Kamara's ability or potential ability.
What I will say about Kamara as well is obviously he thoroughly enjoyed his time at Portsmouth, and it's clear to see that John Mousinho is a really good man manager. Someone who can thrive off man management, as we've seen this season, is Josh Murphy. Obviously had a brilliant season for Oxford and was sort of rejuvenated by Des Buckingham. I know he sort of fell out of favour when he first joined Oxford, really. And then Des Buckingham came in, put his arm around his shoulder, and Josh Murphy was probably the best player in League One towards the latter half of the season. So the fact that he's now at Portsmouth as sort of almost direct replacement for Abu Kamara, it'd be interesting to see how both of those get on if Kamara was to leave us and rejoin Portsmouth, or whether his spot in that team is now gone.
I mean, also, sorry to butt in, Freddie, as well. There could also be a scenario where John Rowe could stay at the club this summer, and then Abu Kamara thinks to himself and his agents, etc., that he hasn't got a pathway. I mean, look, you've seen the rumours for the last 12 months. I think Brentford, Portsmouth, etc. They've all showed interest in Kamara. So I think his agents know that now is the right time for him to play regularly. And whether that is at Portsmouth, I think they could definitely push for a move if they see that Rowe is still here come the end of the window.
No, it's all very interesting and fair points. It does seem as if, as Henry mentioned there, Josh Murphy being brought into Portsmouth, that could maybe mean that Kamara isn't going to play as many games if he were to go there. Of course, the whole thing about there being a pathway for him, I think that is quite evident. This is a player who has got a lot of hype around him, and Norwich will want to be keen to keep. He could very much play in the system if Sainz ends up being that more of a central midfield role that we saw him in the beginning of pre-season, rather than more of an advanced winger that we saw against Liège, where of course he ended up scoring. But Kamara can play, either side of an attacking three. He can play as a striker as well, so he's a very versatile player. But as much as there's about being a pathway for the player and all that being there, of course, is very important. Ultimately, it's down to the player's performance. If they don't, at least that's what I think anyway. If Kamara does come into the team and he ends up he doesn't play well and he's not doing the things he was doing last season, of course, it's a harder league and that's just natural. You go up a division, the teams get harder, and there's a lot of good teams that even loiter around mid-table in the Championship. If he ends up not really kicking on and he's a regular starter, then ultimately he's probably not going to end up playing. It's just as important that there is a route for him to clearly get into the team and get minutes. But for him as well, he has to take the opportunities, because if he doesn't, then ultimately could he end up maybe regretting not going elsewhere if there was the opportunity? Will that then affect his transfer value? It probably will. But again, that's a variable that only he and Johannes Oftorup can control. That is, of course, that's the thing with football. It's completely unpredictable, and he needs to be the one to kick on and continue doing what he knows he's capable of. But again, it's the same thing if he needs the manager to trust him and put him in that starting 11. But that's, of course, completely out of our control. But to now go on, we've, of course, talking about the men's team. We do that every single week. That's sort of that is one of our main focuses, the big one, really. But going over to the women's team, they began pre-season. And what I actually noticed was Norwich still are yet to announce their away kit. The Norwich women did play away from home in a pre-season friendly against Oxford United. They actually wore the third shirt of last season, so the red cabbage kit. So could that be a shirt that maybe is kept this season, or was that simply because we haven't had the away kit yet? They had to wear that, right? Of course, because you can't wear yellow against yellow. That's a crime. But Henry, you are my football writers called chief women reporter, as you do all the reports on the website. But pre-season does begin for them against Oxford United, a team who you said to me before we started this that the new manager Andy Cook did used to manage. So what were your takes on that for pre-season? Must have been good to see the big names back out and hopefully performing well.
Yeah, it was good to see. So we did lose the game, unfortunately. We lost 2-1. But I guess that was to be expected, because Oxford are in the tier above us. They're in the Southern Premier Division, which is the step 3 of women's football, and we're in step 4. So it was higher league opposition. We did lose, but it was only narrow. And I know it's a cliche, but Norwich fans do love whipping out the we won the second half argument, and we did. We did win the second half. So Megan Todd scored. It was nice to see her back on the score sheet as well. And yeah, I think there are positives to take from it, having only a narrow defeat against a higher league opposition. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to the season, which starts in a few months' time. Dulwich Hamlet being the first game. So yeah, really looking forward to it, and it's nice seeing them back out and prepping for quite a long campaign ahead.
Yeah, of course, we're ever so close to promotion last season. They only lost one game, and that was on the final day, albeit got so many draws, and that's why AFC Wimbledon ended up winning the division. But you have to say, with the form Norwich City women were in throughout all of last season, and a manager who, of course, you did a video on it. If the YouTube viewers watching this haven't watched it already, they can go back and check that out a bit and see a bit more about Andy Cook and what sort of pedigree he brings to the football club. Of course, has managed at only levels above Norwich, so it's incredible, really, that he was brought down a division or two to get involved in this very exciting project. So all areas in the club, it seems, which is very refreshing to see after Stuart Webber openly, well, he pretty much disgraced women's football, and that he said he couldn't have a care in the world about women's football at all, which, you know, is brilliant when you probably work with Flo Allen on a daily basis. I'm sure she really appreciated those comments from Webber. But yeah, so to go back on that, of course, to go really going into the season, really, do you think, Henry, that Norwich are going to be the runaway favourites for the league title, and that this time around they will get it over the line and they'll be going up to step 3 next season? Or do you think maybe it's still a bit early to get ahead of themselves? And much like the men's team, they've got a manager whose playing style they need to learn, but if it cracks on, they can probably be one of the best sides in the division.
I think without a doubt, we're the overwhelming favourites, to be honest. Last season, as you mentioned, we only lost one game, and that was on the final day when everything was already done and dusted. So if we carry on that form, then yeah, everyone will not look forward to playing at the Nest. Will make it really tough for them. And I think the appointment of Andy Cook is such a smart bit of business. It's that will be the thing, I think, this season that gets us over the line. He did well at Oxford United, as I said, sort of implementing an attacking play style, got them up to the third tier of women's football, then moved to Nottingham Forest and did exactly the same thing. And actually, at Nottingham Forest, he won the third tier of women's football, but still didn't get promoted because they had to then play a playoff. I think he won the Northern Premier Division and had to face Watford, who won the Southern Prem, and they lost in that playoff. So despite winning their league, still didn't go up. And then obviously he sort of became a number 2 at Newcastle last season, and they did get promoted to the Women's Championship. So he just experienced success wherever he goes. And I think it's such a smart appointment after the sort of quite shocking dismissal of Martin Herdman in January, February time. But yeah, so I think that'll be crucial. The only thing that perhaps scares me a bit is the outgoings. We have made a few incomings, which look good, quite a lot through our professional development centre. So they've sort of made that step up from like youth women's football to the first team, so to speak. But we obviously lost Anna Larkins. That was announced before the end of the season to give her a good send-off. But we've just lost Rachel Lawrence as well. She's gone to, I might be wrong on this, but I think there's a team called like City of Liverpool or something. And they're either 1 tier or 2 tiers above us, and she's gone there. So I think for Norwich, that'll be a huge miss. And it's all about how we replace those players. But with Andy Cook's playing style and pedigree, and some of the top players like Ellie Smith, Natasha Snelling, Megan Todd, all of them, the fact that they've staying at Norwich at the minute, I think, we have to win the league this season with a team that are sort of spoiled for talent.
Well, there's already similarities to that in the men's team. Some incomings coming in, a few outgoings, and they're trying to keep the key players and everything. It all sounds as if that's all very much all united, really, at Norwich City, and all the elements. There's clearly a lot going on that is very similar. A new manager, great playing style, and it seems if they're going to do well on paper based on the division and the ability they possess. So, well, it seems if it's very much the exact same across both sides for Norwich City at the minute. But one last thing to end on now. We mention this name every week. Adam Eder has reared his head into the podcast once again, but this time not for transfer reasons. He actually played quite a few minutes in pre-season, actually got the assist for the Borja Sainz goal against Standard Liège, played about half an hour against Club Brugge, and again, Johannes Oftorup, full of praise for him, a player who we know he really wants to do well and he wants to utilise. Of course, Josh Sargent is still yet to come back. Jose Cordoba is still yet to come back. We did see Kenny McLean and Grant Hanley and even Angus Gunn. I believe they all went to Belgium, albeit Angus Gunn didn't actually play, but the Euros contingent of the Norwich City squad has come back. We're still waiting for the Copa America ones. But Adam Eder, still, again, full of praise. Didn't think he was too bad at all in the pre-season matches he played. He showed promising signs, but again, the pair of you, if you're able to, Will, you said you watched both games. Henry, I don't know if you were able to, but again, going back to Adam Eder, thoughts really still on him and the fact that he's been the main striker for this sort of halfway point in the pre-season, and even when Sargent comes back, are we going to be seeing Eder maybe utilised as the main man? I was thinking about this actually yesterday. Of course, both Sargent and Eder had experience of being played out wide under Smith and Wagner respectively,
and Russell.
Yeah, and Adam, and Alan Russell. Yeah, can't forget Alan Russell and his set piece mastermind. But do you think that maybe we could be returning to that potentially? Do you think we could be seeing maybe Eder's the main man, and I think Sargent would probably be the more capable of being the one to play out wide? But could that happen? Because I think Johannes Oftorup is more of in his base formation that he plays with one striker. So albeit I saw you, Will, there for the Spotify listeners. You had a concerned look on your face, and you didn't look too happy when I said that. But do you think that we could be returning to Sargent being utilised maybe as a winger, but he could be probably maybe an inverted one and come on the right side of a striker maybe? Or am I talking absolute nonsense and it's going to be one or the other, and the other one's going to have to sit on the bench for the majority of the season?
Yeah, well, I hope not. I think when they played a front three of Pookie, Sargent, and Eder during I think it was under Dean Smith's tenure, and obviously Alan Russell, what a man. When that was the case, just like there was no chance creation there. I think we played Sheffield United at home one game, and all three of them started. And I think we had something like only like 2 shots on goal, or like 1 or 2 shots on target. It was so limited, and I just think all three of them are sorry, Sargent and Eder, that they're just both better in the number 9 role. I mean, back to Eder. I thought I was actually really encouraged by his performance against Liège. I think technically he looks much better. He also looks really sharp as well. I mean, little stuff like his first touch is really sound. So that's all really good, encouraging to see, because obviously Forest wants to build a team who I think is very technically gifted and can play through tight areas as well. But I think the biggest thing that I noticed actually during Eder's game against Liège was it like his final ball. I think we saw it for the Symes goal. He got the assist, and that's a perfect demonstration of it. I think we're all kind of accustomed to Eder being a very handy unit from a physical perspective, but I think at times we've kind of felt a bit disappointed with his like technical quality and like his technical ability. But seeing Eder play like 2 or 3 nice passes into the attacking third, especially during the first half, was very encouraging, especially because I think obviously there seems to be such a desire for Fark to want to keep him here as well. Obviously, I think if there's no other suitors for any other players, then he's going to have to go. That's just football, I'm afraid. But look, if we're still here come September the 1st or 2nd and Eder is still playing well, then I'm all for it, really, because it adds another option to our squad. Can I tell you right now who's going to be our first choice striker? No, I think people will still be keen for Sargent to play as a first choice. And that just immediately for Adam Eder, he wants to be that first choice. He's not interested in being second choice for Norwich. He's done it for the last 5 years anyway, so he wants something new. And I don't know, I saw some actually reports of that. I think Celtic's best player, Matt O'Reilly, has been subject to like a £20 million Euro bid from Atalanta. So maybe then if Celtic do have to sell, they might then reinvest some of those funds into an improved signing for Adam Eder. So maybe there is some promise there after all. But look, I think the situation has been so contrasting the whole pre-season, really. He wants him here. I think we want to see him here as well. But at the same time, Norwich need players in a team as well, as I said earlier as well. So very interesting. But overall, from Eder's performance levels, I was quite encouraged by his cameo against Liège.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I cannot wait for the transfer window to be over just because of this rumour. I feel like a broken record every single week, to be honest, when talking about Adam Eder. But
one more time, Henry. Say it again. One more time.
I do want Adam Eder to stay at the club if it suits him. But if we do get the right money for him, I think we should move him on. I've said that time and time again, and I just think that makes the most sense. It seems that every year there's at least one transfer saga at the club, and this is Norwich's transfer saga this season. It is the Adam Eder debate. What I will say, I wasn't able to watch all of the preseason games in their entirety, but one thing that always stood out to me with Adam Eder was his first touch, or his lack of a first touch. I thought he's one of those players who's physically dominant, knows where the back of the net is, but his first touch is really poor and always lets him down. So if he's improved on that and has matured as a footballer and go into a huge club like Celtic, then I'm all for it. And I'm really excited to see what he can do if he does stay at Norwich. I think there's no doubt he comes back to Colney as a better footballer for having that experience at Celtic. But it will just be interesting to see how he does if Norwich are to keep him, or if there's a bid sufficient enough that Norwich are to accept it.
Yeah, No, there's no doubt about that. And of course, we say it every single week. If the bid is right, sell him. If not, keep him, play him, hope he does well. If not, then whatever, drop him, get rid of him. Then who knows? We got to wait and see. It's a big season for a lot of players under a new manager, and he really is the key name who just keeps coming up. But actually, I got, albeit there's no Jack once again, and there's going to be no quick fire hot takes, which again is a big shame. But they'll be back next week. I've got one in my head that I've been thinking of, that I got thinking of all week, and so I've got one quick fire question that's a bit of nonsense before we properly sign off. I want to know, who is the sexiest Norwich player that's ever played for the club, in your opinions?
I don't know. Probably someone like Nelson Oliveira. I think he just oozes sex appeal. Especially when he took his shirt off on the opening day. You're like, yeah, I can get behind this guy.
Yeah.
I think many people would love to see Timo Pukki's headline again at Norwich and just think, wow, he's an absolute sex machine. But for me, Andrew Sermon, I think Andrew Sermon, and yeah, that's my one. But yeah, but Pukki's headline was a real signature of my week, and thank God he was good at football as well.
You know what? Talking about that, what mine? Mine is actually, I was going to say Mitchell Dykes.
Ooh, good shout, yeah.
Big, tall man, lovely slicked back hair, lovely beard. It's like Henry's beard. It was beautiful. It was absolutely sensational. But actually, talking about Pukki, again, just before we go, what I always loved, especially in the Championship when we won it the first time under Farker, was when you could see the constant weeks and weeks where his hair was growing back, and then eventually it would, and then 1 week it'd all be shaven off, and he'd end up scoring 1 or 2 whenever he shaved the head. So freshly shaved Teemu Pukki was the best version. It was that hair, it was nice and thick, and it was probably like sat back about there with the little bit there, and then that was all shaved off 1 week, and then he was back scoring his goals if he hadn't scored for a while. But maybe he had that as a superstition. Maybe it was like the Buddha, where they were all just rubbing his bald head for good luck or something. And obviously that ended up being all right. But anyway, there's all. Yeah, go on.
That was good, mate. But now we're talking on the themes of sudden appearance changes. Can we just say blonde Matthias Norman was different gravy? I just have to end on that.
Actually, no, I'm going to change my answer. No, Norman. 100% Norman was the sexy. Do you remember his Instagram? He's got that carved body from God, and he just looked. He was perfect. Yeah. Oh, I do miss Norman. He was blonde Norman was quality.
In terms of appearances as well, short sleeve Aaron Wilbraham was awful. But that's when you were getting goals.
Oh, he's a real EFL cult hero, Aaron Wilbraham.
He is.
Oh.
Wilbrahimovic.
Wilbrahimovic. Christ. It's Aaron Wilbraham.
Do any of you know why Steve Morrison wore number 5 on his back?
Probably because Zidane wore it or something like that. He thought he was Zidane. He would know. There you go. Somehow delved more into. That might even be the thumb. I might try and find a picture of Wilbraham and Morrison with each other and try and get that up as the thumbnail. But anyway, there you go. There's all of your proper talk, your transfer talk, and your Norwich City news for the week with a bit of nonsense chucked in at the end. I hope Jack enjoys that if he watches this back, and you all enjoy it just as much as we do recording it every week. So there you go. Installment number 7 of the pod. There you have it. It's all done. We'll be seeing you this time next week for another NCFC catch-up. There will actually be a pre-season game at Carrow Road. Norwich are going to play German second division side FC Magdeburg. So hopefully these two will be at that. I'm in Brighton, and that's where I'm based, so I'm probably not going to be there for it, which is a shame. But hopefully it all goes well and Norwich pick up what would be their second win of pre-season out of 4 games. But anyway, there you go. I have been Freddie Humphrey-Wakefield. They have been the excellent Henry Miller and Will Grant. We will see you for the next video here on the MyFootballWriter channel. We'll see you this time next week on either YouTube or Spotify, however you choose to listen or watch. to the weekly instalment of the podcast. It's goodbye for now, and we'll see you this time next week, or even for the next video here on My Football Writer.